चलो स्टार्ट करते हैं. So today we are going to discuss the industrial revolution. That is going to be our topic of discussion. Okay. So in the industrial revolution, the first thing that comes to our mind is, देखो सीधी बात है, पहले मतलब बहुत ही सिंपल तरीके से चलते हैं. What we have industrial revolution. So what is the name? Name is this. Name is industrial revolution. ठीक है. And what are the things that we are discussing in the industrial revolution? In the industrial revolution, we are discussing the industrial revolution which happened in Britain or in England, right? So we are discussing that it is taking place in England, ठीक है, / Britain, कुछ भी लिख सकते हो आप. Second aspect that we are discussing in England, from when to when? From the time period of 1750s to 1850s. That is the time period of this industrial revolution. Now a question, there are certain questions which come in our mind, right? One of the statement is that this industrial revolution, it happened first in England, right? So therefore one question which comes to our mind is this. Why industrial revolution? It happened first in England, right? Industrial revolution, it happened in rest of Europe after 1870, right? तो ऐसा क्या था that your industrial revolution, it happened first in England? ठीक है, इस तरीके से. ठीक है, ये heat version. So why industrial revolution? It happened first in England. This is one of the question. Another question which comes to our mind is that this industrial revolution, it was not a revolution. अभी क्वेश्चन क्यों है ये भी देखेंगे और इसका आंसर क्या है ये भी देखेंगे. Industrial revolution was not a revolution. Obviously answer तो इसका answer will be that it is a revolution. That's why it is mentioned as a revolution, right? So therefore that component will be discussing. ठीक है. Another aspect which comes is the components of the industrial revolution, and obviously one of the most important aspect is what was this industrial revolution. So first of all, we begin with by saying that it happened first in England from 1750s to 1850s. First component is what was industrial revolution or what is it? So it is actually very simple. कैसे? Industrial revolution, it basically represents 2-3 things. The first thing it represents is, it is a change in the way in which goods were produced in the society. So therefore earlier the goods were not produced by machines, but after the industrial revolution, after the industrialization, there is advent of machines, and now the goods, they will be produced by the machines. So the first component becomes that it is a change in the method of production. It is a change in the method of production. What kind of production it is? It is now mechanized production. A change in the method of production to what? To mechanized production. Because पहले कैसे काम होता था? Earlier it was to be done without machines. There were certain tools, but majorly through hand tools, etc. That kind of a production process used to be there. Now proper machines are being introduced, right? So therefore it is a change in method of production. The first component, how it is changing is, now it is machine based production. So your machines are introduced. That's why we are using the term mechanized production. Second aspect of change in this production is that there was also change in location of production. That is, earlier the production, it used to take place in the backyards. That is, earlier the production, it used to take place, in the backyard of your homes, right? So kahin pe bhi a set of workers, they might come together and they might say that, okay, this is our small workshop and here we are producing goods. But now there is factory mode of production. That is, for the first time, big factories are being set up where hundreds of people, thousands of workers, they will come together for production of goods, right? So therefore, what is the second component of this production? It is now you are moving towards factory based production. You're moving towards factory based production. राइट. एंड व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय फैक्ट्री बेस्ड प्रोडक्शन? जैसे आप फैक्ट्रीज आज के टाइम पे जानते हैं, पहले उस तरीके से फैक्ट्रीज नहीं होती थी. द वे यू नो फैक्ट्रीज टुडे, फैक्ट्रीज वर नॉट there earlier. Earlier it used to be a very decentralized kind of a production where people would be producing goods with the help of hand tools and not machines, and not at a central location like a factory, but in a very decentralized kind of a manner, right? So therefore इसमें एक और component में add कर सकते हैं to factory based production, and now also towards centralized production we are moving. So what is a factory based production? It is also a centralized production, right? तो इसमें centralized mass production, where your hundreds of people, they are coming together, thousands of people, they will come together in a factory to produce goods, right? This is what is happening. Another aspect is now these factories, they were set up in urban areas, right? These factories, they were set up in urban areas, and therefore the production earlier in the whole economy was decentralized. Imagine like some production taking place in some small town. Imagine a town, okay? So there the production, it is taking place in the backyard of the homes. Maybe there is a small workshop here where a blacksmith is working. A small workshop is there where some furniture is being produced. Some small workshop, it's there where 5 to 10 people, they have come together. They are using their hand tools to manufacture certain, let's say, utensils or whatever, right? It is very decentralized kind of a product. So basically all over the economy, very decentralized kind of, geographically अगर देखा जाए तो very decentralized kind of production is taking place. But now these big factories are being established, and these factories, they are being established in the urban areas. So therefore what do we see? The production, it moves away from the hinterland towards the center, that is towards the urban areas. That is another component. अच्छा, एक और चीज क्या देखनी है? What is being produced? Earlier, if we look in the economy, before the industrial revolution, the economy would be dominated by agrarian products. What will be the major activity? Major activity will be agriculture, whereby you will be producing food crops and you will be producing cash crops. That will form your major activity of production, agriculture sector. Whereas your industrial sector, it will be having what? Your industrial sector, it will be having something like, hand based production which is going on, as I mentioned earlier, कि कहीं पे कोई, there is a small workshop where some small production is taking place, be it of anything, any non-agricultural goods, they are being produced there, right? So therefore another aspect that we see is now this change in the method of production, it is there with the help of machines, and this thing is there. And second, अगर इसकी location भी देखा जाए, so your shift towards the urban areas from the rural areas, this is how your shift is taking place. So therefore it is a change in the method of production, the way in which goods are produced in the society, right? And now you are moving towards mechanized production, you have factory based production, and you have urban area based production. So therefore this is your industrial revolution, that is what is happening, okay? Plus in this industrial revolution, what is the second component? During this change in the method of production, it is assisted by certain things. It is assisted by certain technological innovations. Certain innovation take place. Machines जो आई हैं, they are a result of innovation. So therefore, these are assisted by certain technological innovations. So yes, that is another aspect that we can mention. Right? And lastly, one of the major important innovation in this machines is that these machines, they are being run by new sources of power. So certain new sources of power, they are developed. For example, first of all, hand-based production was going on. Now hydropower will be utilized. Such machines will be built which are running on hydropower. Then steam power will come into picture. Such machines will be built which are running on steam power. So therefore, this mechanized production, it is running on new sources of power. So therefore that becomes an additional component. hydropower, steam power, right? So therefore new sources of power they are coming. So this is how this is what your industrial revolution is. That is, it is change in the method of production in the society towards mechanized production, which is assisted by technological innovations like new sources of power like hydro and steam. It is also a factory based production, that is centralized mass production, and location of production it shifts to the urban areas earlier from the rural areas, right? So this is how your industrial revolution, that is, that is a what of it. Second aspect comes is why industrial revolution it happened first in England, right? So इस component को हम देखेंगे, but इस component को हम last में देखेंगे, that why this industrial revolution it happened first in England. First of all we'll be discussing the component. तो इस question को we'll keep in later. Next question comes is that industrial revolution was not a revolution. Why? Why this question can arise? Why this question can arise? This question can arise because of the word revolution. What is the meaning of the word revolution? Revolution, it means a series of events which represent a huge amount of change in a very small amount of time. So what is this revolution? Revolution is huge amount of change. It has two components. One is huge amount of change. It can also be represented in this particular manner, that your revolution, it is somewhat a function of amount of change into 1 by time, inverse of time. So revolution, it can be decided by huge amount of change happening in a very small amount of time. So if this time component will be very, very small, let's say it is 0.001, just roughly for the purpose of understanding, then this multiplication will be high. But if this time component is hundreds of years, then what will happen? This multiplication function, इसका जो amount है वो कम हो जाएगा, है ना? So basically your revolution is what? It is a huge amount of change which happens in a small amount of time. So why this particular question can arise that industrial revolution was not a revolution? This question can arise because of this particular time period, that it takes 100 odd years, and therefore the second criteria, so huge amount of change, that is fine, but the second criteria that this change should happen in a small amount of time for anything to be called a revolution, this second criteria is not being established, right? So therefore when we call American Revolution a revolution, why do we call it a revolution? What is the huge amount of change? Like the first republic, it is coming into picture. For the first time the ideas of the Enlightenment, they are being implemented, right? For the first time there is going to be equality among men. So that is a huge amount of change. But it is also happening in a relatively small amount of time, from 1765 to 1783, take a plus specifically the American War of Independence. Similarly, the French Revolution, 1789, very quick series of changes. Russian Revolution 1904, Russian Revolution 1905, बस वो 1905 ही है. It's only we are talking about 1 year. Russian Revolution 1917, we are talking only about 1917. Certain months which are there. So amount of time it is relatively very, very small, and amount of change it is very, very high. So therefore usually revolutions, they represent huge amount of change, but that change it happens in a very small amount of time. But in the case of your industrial revolution, it is spanning over 100 years, and that is why the question. So therefore how do we try to justify that still it is a revolution? So we agree that yes, the amount of time which was there, which was taken for these innovations to come by, for adoption of these innovations, that amount of time was very high. Yes, it was 100 odd years, but the amount of change was so huge. It had economic impacts, it had political impacts, it had geopolitical impacts, it had social impact, it had impacts on the ideology of socialism. Marxism came into existence. So such huge amount of change was there that even if these changes are taking across 100 odd years, still we call it industrial revolution. Still we will use the word revolution because amount of change is that high. So therefore we'll try, इस question के answer में क्या किया जाएगा? इस question के answer में impact of industrial revolution will be the answer. So how it will be answered? Answer will be that how your impact of industrial revolution was very, very high. So in our discussion we will be talking about the impact of industrial revolution, and that we will discuss the impact of industrial revolution not just on Britain but also on the rest of the world, and also on the people, right? So therefore we'll be discussing this impact of the industrial revolution to justify this answer to this particular question, right? So this is a broad framework. Next we'll come to the components. So components के लिए बहुत एक आसान तरीका है, ठीक है, उसको हम begin करेंगे. I'll give you 30 odd seconds or 40 odd seconds. इसको एक initial framework आप लिख लीजिए. The major component of industrial revolution, it is going to come after this particular slide. So therefore I give you 40 seconds to write this down and then we will move ahead. Triangle indicates change. ठीक है, तो पहले किस तरीके से प्रोडक्शन होता था? अर्लियर द प्रोडक्शन इट यूज्ड टू टेक प्लेस थ्रू हैंड, यू नो, सो बेसिकली हैंड लूम्स विल बी देयर, वीविंग ऑफ क्लॉथ विल बी टेकिंग प्लेस थ्रू हैंड, यू नो, हथौड़े चल रहे होंगे फॉर मेकिंग ऑफ एवरीथिंग. मशीन्स वर एज सच नॉट देयर. मैकेनाइज्ड प्रोडक्शन इज नॉट देयर. सो व्हाट इज इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन? इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ मशीन्स. दैट इज द कोर कंपोनेंट. दिस इज चेंज. जब बोलता हूं तब आप सुनते नहीं है, मतलब दिस इज चेंज. Huge amount of change in a very small amount of time. Britain, this is Britain, BR actually, not BR, BR, Britain. Yeah, so मतलब इम्पैक्ट तो वो सब डिस्कस करेंगे, वो आ जाएगा दोबारा. इट्स वो अभी आपको बीओ भी दिख रहा है तो भी कोई टेंशन ना ले, ठीक है. तो लिख लिया होगा आपने, और टाइम तो ज्यादा ही दे दिया मैंने, उतना देना नहीं था. कहाँ गया हमारा वो, ये रहा. ठीक है. सो नाउ लेट अस बिगिन विद द कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ द इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन. एक चीज इसमें आप एक चीज ये ध्यान रखिएगा that there were certain pillars of industrial revolution. The first pillar of the industrial revolution was the textile sector. The second pillar of the industrial revolution was the steel sector, and the third pillar of the industrial revolution was the transport sector, right? And the fourth pillar of the industrial revolution was the power, new sources of power, that is steam, right? So why it is important? It is important because first of all, when you're talking about steel sector, why steel sector is important? It is important because your steel, it is very, very important for manufacturing of machines. If steel production is not there, which you call pig iron and cast iron, these are the different forms of steel. So if steel production it is not there, then your machines will not be produced, right? So that's why development in the iron and steel sector, it is very, very important to the industrial revolution. The second component that we mentioned is steam. So obviously if your machines you have produced, but those machines they need certain kind of fuel, and steam power it had the efficiency to, it had the wherewithal to run the machines at a very efficient, in a very efficient manner. So therefore that's why your steam. And how do you generate steam? You generated steam by using coal. So therefore coal sector it represents the steam sector. So therefore coal sector also becomes important. So therefore iron and steel sector, coal sector, they are important. The third aspect which I mentioned is your textile sector, and the fourth I mentioned is your transport sector. Now we will come to the transport sector. Why it is important? It was important for the interconnectivity. वो हम देखेंगे कैसा था. The transport sector was responsible for bringing raw materials from the far off areas to the factories where machines can turn that raw material into finished goods. And then again transport sector was very, very important for shipping out this finished good to the markets which are there, you know, to far off places within England plus even to rest of the world, right? So that's why transport sector becomes important. The fourth sector, and that is actually our beginning point, is the textile sector. Why do you mention textile sector? Textile sector is a pillar. We call textile sector a pillar of the industrial revolution because it was the reason for the different technological innovations which took place. Textile sector was the reason for these different innovations to take place. क्यों ऐसा? ऐसा इसलिए था because at that particular point of time around the time period of 1750s, the sector which was booming, that was your textile sector. That's why India was called सोने की चिड़िया, you know, सनी लियोनी. ये दुनिया पित्तल दी, बेबी डॉल में सोनी दी. ठीक है, तो कोई बुरा ना माने. ठीक है, होली तो नहीं है खैर. Anyways, but the point is that India was called सोने की चिड़िया. Why? Because India was very, very rich in textiles, and the East India Company was minting huge amount of money by trading with India. And what kind of trade it was doing? Trade, it can be of two types. You can be an importer or you can be an exporter, or you can be both, right? What kind of trade the East India Company was engaging in India? They would basically, the East India Company would come to India and they would pick up finished products from India. They would pick up finished cotton cloth from India, and they will take this finished cotton cloth to Britain, to England, and there they will sell it at huge profit margins, right? And the demand for the Indian cotton cloth, the finished cotton cloth, was booming in England. And as a result, around this time period of 1750s, the non-East India Company businesses, they got jealous of the East India Company, and they said that why should the East India Company be allowed to single-handedly capture the cotton market of Britain? Cannot we manufacture cotton, finished goods within England so that we can tap into the market of England? Why should the East India Company get all the profits? So therefore it was the jealousy. It was the jealousy of the non-East India Company businesses which resulted in a series of innovations where in the textile sector, which resulted in this industrial revolution, right? So therefore what was the impetus, the importance of the textile sector is this jealousy component, right? So therefore if you look at the background of the industrial revolution, Right, so EIC earned huge profits from its trade with India in finished cotton cloth. It used to import. EIC had monopoly over trade with the East until your 1813. East means India. Okay, with China it had till 1833. With India until 1813. This led to non-EIC businesses. They wanted to profit from the booming cotton market of England. This led to a series of innovation in the textile sectors which allowed for mechanized production of cotton and laid foundation of the industrial revolution. For this to understand, we need to understand what is your textile sector. Textile sector, it is having three components. The first component of the textile sector is, first of all, you separate the fiber from the cotton seeds. So the first component is separation of fiber from cotton seeds, or separation of fiber from seeds. Let's make it generic. Okay, this is the fiber. Separation of fiber from seeds. This is the first process. So after this first process, what do you have? You have fiber. So this particular thing, it gives fiber. The second component of this is you convert fiber into thread. That is known as spinning. So therefore the second component is spinning of fiber, right? And what do you get? Into thread, right? So the second component that you get, it is this thread that you get. Last component is looming, or conversion of this thread by use of looms into cloth. So therefore this is the step-by-step production. So there are three stages to the textile production. First of all, in the fields you would separate the fiber from the seeds. The second component, you would convert the fiber into thread. That particular process, it is known as spinning. So you spin fiber into thread. And the last component is you convert the thread into cloth. This is known as looming, and that's why hand looms, power looms, these are the different machines which are used for this. So therefore it is a three-stage process. First of all, fibers, they are brought out from the agriculture sector, then those fibers, they are converted into thread, and then thread into cloth, right? So therefore the innovations which will take place, ultimately what you want is this finished cotton cloth. No, non-EIC businesses, they want to manufacture this cloth which is right now being imported from India. They want this cloth to be manufactured in England. So therefore innovations, they will take place in these sectors. Okay. We have a question. Khushbu is asking, sir, as per my limited knowledge, finished goods were exported to colonies like India. Here sir wrote reverse, or the things were opposite before the revolution. How did it benefit British? Yes, the things, they were reverse before the revolution. Before the revolution, you would be surprised to know that in the whole history of, documented history of whatever 10,000, whatever 15,000 years, जितने की भी है मुझे को नहीं पता, only 300 years were such, 300 to 400 years were such, where India and China, they were not the top economic powers of the world. Otherwise, throughout history, China has been the number one power and India has been the number two power always. In fact, in 1650, India became the top economy of the world. For a very small time period, we also surpassed China around the time period of 1650. So India and China were very, very rich. And that thing, it starts changing from 1750 onwards. That is, once your industrialization, it begins in Britain, that starts changing. So basically India and China, they used to be factories of the world. Just that mechanized production was not there in 1750, in 1650, in 1550, mechanized production was not there. And what kind of economy, world economy was? Dominated by agrarian products, or it would be dominated by non-agrarian products which are manufactured by hand. For example, आप हाथ से cotton बनाते थे, आप हाथ से कुछ और चीज बनाते थे, utensils बनाते थे, कारीगरी करते थे, right? So therefore handicraft sector used to dominate. It was not machine based production, right? So therefore at this particular point of time, until your industrialization properly happens, the East India Company, it will be importing finished goods from India. ये लोग भिखारी थे, they were beggars, they were completely. China, for example, China said, what will you give us? Sorry, we don't want to import anything from you. You don't have anything which we don't have. You don't have anything. You don't have anything which you can give it to us. Right? So therefore China was so rich, and as a result, around the time period of 1840, your first opium war took place. China did not need anything from the West. It was so rich. So yes, the structure of the trade, it will change. That is one of the aspects of the change. So the first innovations, they took place in these sectors. Right? The first machine, it was developed, spinning machine, looming machine, and then machine will be developed here also. So therefore, for documenting that, so that is the importance of the textile sector. Now let us move on to, इसको आप लिख लीजिए, and then we will in a very, मैंने एक थोड़ा सा innovative type का एक चीज बनाया जिसको मैं पिस्ता बोलता हूँ, PISTA, and with the help of that, in one page we will be able to have the whole of industrial revolution. It will become very, very easy, right? So yes, and in fact, like you are mentioning ginning, so this ginning, it comes out because a machine, it was developed known as cotton gin. ठीक है, उससे, ठीक है. So anyways, आप इसको लिखिए and then we will move on. I'll give you 30 seconds for this. Right? So anyways, this is your textile sector. लिख लिया होगा आपने. Now let us come to the components of the industrial revolution. And when we come to the components of the industrial revolution, what are these components? These components goes on like this. So basically, this is your P, this is your pista, PISTA. So how you can remember is when you have badam, pista, you get energy, right? So like industrial revolution, it energizes the economy. Similarly, like your pista, it energizes you. ठीक है, तो basically एक mnemonic है pista. ठीक है, so basically these are the different sectors where these innovations, they will take place. The first, the T, it stands for the textile sector. So here what is happening? These are the series of innovations which will come. So basically in the textile sector, what first component that we see is that first of all, a machine is developed which can very rapidly convert the thread, which can very rapidly convert the fiber into thread. Right? So first of all, your spinning machines, they come into picture, and they are developed around the time period of 1700s. Right? So ज़्यादा detail में जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, but these are the three people. So basically, better machines, machines which can in a faster way, they can convert. So we can simply write faster spinning machines, they are converted, they are developed. So first thing is that faster spinning machines. And they are developed around the time period of 1700s. So beginning from 1750, exact year याद रखने की जरूरत नहीं है. किन लोगों ने डेवलप किया? फॉर एग्जाम्पल, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल हार्ग्रीव्स. He was the first one to develop a machine. After this, Crompton, after this your Arkwright, he developed a machine which could run on hydropower. Right. So first of all, Hargreaves developed a machine which could do faster spinning. Then your Arkwright, another person is there. He develops a machine which is using hydropower, which runs on water power. Right. So water power कैसे? For example, maybe along a lake or along a stream or along the river, you can have some kind of a turbine, attached to the machine, and as your water, it moves the turbine, your machine, it will run. So therefore, he developed a machine which could use hydropower. So therefore, he developed hydro-powered machine. m/c इज मशीन, ठीक है, ये मशीन को मैं बार बार वो नहीं लिख रहा, इसको m/c कर दो मशीन. So therefore Arkwright he developed a hydro powered machine. And lastly Crompton, he merged the benefits of the two machines into one. So therefore he combined the positives of the two machines. Right, so he combined the positives of the two machines. So 1700s, the kind of ultimately what is happening, these spinning machines, that is very rapid conversion of fiber into thread, right? A very rapid conversion of fiber into thread is happening. As a result, now there will be pressure on the looming sector. कि भैया आप भी तो कुछ करिए. Huge amount of thread is being created, but utilization of that thread needs to happen. So therefore utilization of thread that needs to happen, and therefore the second series of innovation. So therefore what will happen? This created pressure. This created pressure on looming sector, and as a result what do we see? As a result we see that your Cartwright, he develops something which is known as a power loom. Right, so earlier there was hand loom, that is you will be you will be converting the thread into cloth using a hand loom. But now your Cartwright, he develops what you call power loom, and this thing happens around the time of late 1700s. So exactly 1785, what happens is your power loom is developed by Cartwright, and this power loom, it is running on hydropower, it is running on horsepower. Horsepower मतलब, so basically it was something like this, मतलब मैं इसको delete कर दूंगा, बस अभी समझाने के लिए बता रहा हूँ. So this power loom, it was something like this. So for example, if this is a well, then some kind of shaft, it will be there in the center, and with this shaft, your this he is a horse, okay. Okay, this horse will be attached, and this horse will be running around like this. ठीक है, ये गधा ज़्यादा लग रहा है, horse कम लग रहा है, ठीक है. Anyway, this horse will be running around this, and this is how, through some mechanism, this machine it will be powered. It will be running. That is why it is known as. That's why the term horsepower came into picture. So therefore, Cartwright, he developed a power loom. It was horse powered, and it was by Cartwright. So you look at the name, how to remember this? Cart, and usually cart is attached with the horse. So therefore that's why Cartwright, power loom, horsepower, right? So therefore he is developing this machine in the looming sector, whereby your faster conversion of thread into cloth is taking place, right? Faster conversion of thread into cloth is taking place. Later on what happened? Later on this time period, your steam, इसके अंदर कुछ कुछ develop हुआ. What is this? This is steam. So here what happened? You remember the song Summer of 69? Right? It's a very, like, it's one of my favorite song, Summer of 69, Bryan Adams, ठीक है, उसी ने गाया था शायद से. Right? So Summer of 69. तो उससे आप याद रख सकते हैं. Summer, it represents heat, right? And therefore heat says steam. So 1769, steam engine, it is developed by James Watt. Right? So you can write a mnemonic, Summer of 69, just for the sake of remembering. Right? So just for the sake of remembering. So steam engine, it was developed by James Watt in 1769. Now this steam engine has been developed, right? Now what happens is, gradually this steam engine, it will be adapted. Gradually the steam engine, it will be adapted to all of these above machines. So basically what is happening, once your power loom it is being developed, first it is developed which is being run on horsepower. After this, then it is adapted for use with hydropower, and then for use with steam power. So therefore this progression is there. From hand based power you are moving towards hydropower, and from hydropower you are moving towards steam power. So therefore this power loom which has been developed, it will be later adapted to run on hydropower, and then on steam power. ठीक है, and then on steam power. And same will be the case for above, right? जो ऊपर वाला है उसके लिए भी तो हम लिख लेंगे उसमें, ठीक है. So power loom, it is. Now what happens is huge amount of pressure is now created on the first sector, that is your ginning sector, that is separation of fiber from seeds. Now what is happening is that your factory, so very slowly, agricultural labor, it is working on the farms, it is separating fiber from the seeds. Very slowly this fiber it is coming. The factory owner which is running this factory, which is very rapidly converting this fiber into thread, he is waiting कि भैया fiber lao, right? At the very same time, he is also under pressure from his client. Who is the client? Client is the buyer of this thread. Who is the buyer of this thread? Who converts this thread into cotton cloth. He is putting pressure on him कि भैया और thread लेके आओ. Where is more thread? And therefore, there was this huge pressure on the first sector to come out with some kind of innovation which can increase the speed at which this fiber it is separated from the seeds. So therefore, around the time period of 1793, a machine is developed which is known as cotton gin, and it is able to separate fiber from the seed 200 times faster than by hand, right? So therefore, this is the last innovation which takes place in the textile sector. So around the time period of 1793. ठीक है, एली विट्टे, and it was for faster separation of ठीक है. So इस तरीके से this is how your all the three sectors they are getting some kind of an innovation by the time period of your 1800s. So this is how the first series of innovation they took place in the textile sector. Second aspect, it is your steam engine. So this steam engine, it is developed by James Watt in 1769. Gradually, so here we can write that later this steam engine, it is adapted it is adapted for spinning machines, for power looms, and also the steam engine, it is coming from the coal sector, right? So you burn coal to generate steam. Now usually the coal mines, they were filled with water, because when you do mining you will come across underground water. So when you are doing mining you will come across water. First of all, that water needs to be pumped out of the ground, and then you will be able to mine the coal. Look at the cycle which is created. Earlier by hand, you will be taking out very slowly, water will be taken out from the mines. Now with the help of the steam engine, this very same process of taking out water for mining of coal, it gets hastened. So basically this steam engine which is running on coal, it is able to generate even more coal. It is able to increase the coal production. Why? Because the very same steam engine which is running on coal is utilized to remove water from the mines. So therefore it is used to remove water from the mine, therefore boosted coal production. तो इससे जो है इस तरीके से आपका coal production भी increase हो रहा है, ठीक है. So this is your steam engine. We'll be talking further about steam engine when we talk about the transport sector, right? So the story, it is not complete with respect to steam. Then the third component comes, it is your iron and steel sector or iron sector. So I, it stands for iron. So basically iron and steel sector, it is very, very important for manufacturing of machines. And what do you need? You need mass production of steel, so that there is mass production of machines. And also you want this steel to be not very costly, because if the steel is very costly, then what will happen? Adoption of machines all across the economy will not take place. And adoption of this technology is very, very important. Why it is important? Because simply, today let's say there is an innovation. Why this mobiles that we have with us? It is, we call it mobile revolution a certain point of time. Why? Because it is adopted by everyone. You see a rickshaw puller, he is having a mobile, right? You see a very elite kind of a person, he is also having a mobile, right? So therefore, adoption of this technology, the spread of the technology which is developed, it is also very important factor. So therefore, whatever innovations are taking place, they should be also cheap. So in the iron sector, what happened? The innovation of blast furnace. Okay. So basically blast furnace it is developed, and this particular you can go and read your ninth class ka books वगैरह. ठीक है. Blast furnace they run on coke, right? So they used to run on coke. So basically conversion of iron into steel, that is their role. So therefore blast furnace was developed. This allowed for cheaper and better quality pig iron and cast iron. These are the types of steel, right? So therefore since they are better quality, so you will have better quality machines. Since they are cheaper, so therefore cost of machines will come down. Decreased cost of machines. So basically this was your iron sector. That is the development which is taking place. Then what you have is T. This T it stands for transport. And the developments in the transport sector were of three kinds. What are the three different kinds of? First of all you had like water transport. Okay. Another that you can have is railways, and last that you can have is roadways. Now within the water transport what is happening is, within the water transport two components are coming. The first component is that there was utilization of the steam engine to small boats and also to the big ships. As a result of it, what will happen? The time which is required to reach India from Britain or to reach Africa from Britain, that time required will come down severely. Why? Because now your ships, they are steam powered. So when you have steam powered ships, therefore the international trade will get hastened up, right? So first component is steam powered ship, that is steam engine, it is adapted for use in ships. Okay. Steam powered ships, they are developed. Second component that comes is, that is your steam powered boats. Boats they can use inland waterway. Boats they can use inland waterway. So the boats they will not be there in the oceans, but boats they can be there in the rivers. Boats they can be there in the canals, right? So therefore steam powered boats are also developed. Steam powered boats are also developed. Apart from this, now what happens is, see, when you have this steam powered boats, they will help in better connecting your market, right? Because किसी भी country में rivers होती हैं, there are internal waterways or inland waterways which are there in the country. So therefore these boats, they will be connecting different parts of the country through the natural waterways, right? So that is there. Can we not build man-made waterways in the form of canals? So therefore huge amount of canal construction took place. So because see, water transport, it is the cheapest mode of transport. Water transport, it is the cheapest mode of transport. So basically to utilize or to maximize the benefits of this innovation of having steam powered boats, the Britishers, they started building man-made canals. And on these canals, these boats, they will be transporting the raw material, they will be transporting the finished goods, and therefore they will be establishing market connectivity. Right? So therefore the third component what the Britishers are doing is canal network building. Right? So the Britishers, they built canal network, and this is how this will assist in your international trade, right? So therefore this will shorten the time. So steam powered ships, they will speed up okay, they will boost this thing, domestic trade, right? So this is how your water transport, it is coming, right? Why? Because this steam engine, it is being deployed in the transport sector. Similarly, in the case of railways, so railways, they were developed around the time period of 1814 by George Stephenson. So therefore he adapted the railway engine, the steam engine, to be deployed in railways, right? So therefore railway trains are innovated, right? So railways, the first cargo train, it is innovated around the time period of 1814 by George Stephenson. Right? So okay, George Stephenson, he was the person who for railways, and the passenger train, it is also coming into picture around the time period of 1830. So 1830, first passenger train, it is coming. What is the utility? Utility is the same like we discussed in the case of water transport, especially the inland water transport. So therefore these railways, they will connect different parts of the country. They will connect the sites of raw material with the factories. They will connect the markets with the factories, right? So very rapidly raw materials, they will travel from the hinterland, from the rural areas, from the sources of raw material towards the factories. The factories, they will be utilizing their machines to convert this raw material into finished products. Then the very same railways, they will transport these finished products to the domestic market, or they will transport these finished products to the ports. And at the ports, what will be waiting? Your big ships will be waiting, and those big ships, they will take these finished products to the rest of the world, right? So therefore it is a multimodal transport which is developing. In railways, what development is taking place? Development of Pakka roads, which were developed by Macadam. That is why Pakka roads, they are also known as macadamized roads. I'll take the questions. 2 questions are there. I'll take. And obviously since they are Pakka roads, so therefore the cost of transport will come down, the wear and tear will come down, the road transport will also become faster. Plus development of railroad network. Now there are 2 questions, let us take. Khushbu is asking, was there a near absence of such machines prior to the revolution? Which kind of machines were used before, and how was this sudden impetus provided that such large inventions they took place. So basically before your mechanized production, they were, ऐसा तो कहना गलत होगा that on a single day suddenly all these machines they are coming, right? तो ऐसा तो कहना गलत होगा. Yes, there were machines, but these machines they were powered by hand. These machines they were powered by hand. Majorly hand tools they were used, and that is why the major sector it was handicraft sector. So we will not be saying that there was complete absence of machines, but yes, what we usually say is that use of hand tools was done for manufacturing of products. And even if some machine was developed, then it was not powered. A machine it is incomplete without its source of power. So therefore it is not complete without its source of power. So therefore it is the kind of power sources which are there, which are being innovated, the adaptation of those machines with this combination of those machines with this power sources. ठीक है, तो वो चीज नहीं है. ठीक है, तो it will be, मतलब मैं exactly ये तो नहीं कह सकता that there was near absence of machines, because before the factory system there was guild system of production. Guild system of production used to be like barbers guilds, like 10 to 12 barbers they have come together and they are providing the services of cutting hair. Similarly goldsmith guild, ब्लैकस्मिथ गिल्ड, तो इस तरीके से गिल्ड्स होती थी. ये तो कहना गलत होगा कि किसी भी टाइप की मशीन्स नहीं थी, बट वर दोज मशीन्स पावर्ड बाय हाइड्रो पावर, पावर्ड बाय स्टीम पावर, दैट वाज नॉट देयर. For example, like if I try to explain it in a very layman term, if you had seen Game of Thrones, right, or if you have seen any historical movie which is before 70s or 50s, so there you see weapons are utilized, right? So weapons are there, gunpowder is there, some different kind of machine is there, but whether that machine which are used in the warfare, are they running on the basis of these modern sources of power? That is not there. Okay. So George Stephenson here, Vishwanath is asking, what stopped European educated class from reproducing the same machines for 100 years? That is why could not France and others copy or buy the British machines for over a century? Your English it is not completely clear, Vishwanath, but I'll try to answer your question. What stopped the European educated class from reproducing the same machines for 100 odd years? Okay, so now I get your question. So actually we'll answer that question when we answer the question that why this industrial revolution it happened first in England. But very briefly I will tell you, there is a requirement for democracy, because democracy it provides for security of property. Second, availability of accumulated money, because the innovators they need to be funded. Third component is law and order stability, right? Fourth component is available of resources, because iron, coal, these are the things which are available in your आपकी जमीन के अंदर मिलते हैं. So basically when series of all of these conditions, when they existed together in the case of England, but they did not in the case of Europe. So therefore we will discuss it, and पहले जैसे हमने discuss किया है, आप विश्वनाथ you think about it that what was the history of Europe when we start discussing it. So for example we discussed beginning with the French Revolution of 1789. Right, and before that we discussed the American War of Independence. So एक बार सोच के देखो कि was there peace and stability in European continent which would allow for businesses to prosper, right? तो उस तरीके से we'll come to that question. ठीक. तो इस तरीके से ये ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर में ultimately what is happening, see what is the utility of transport sector. This point I hinted at that the transport sector was one of the most important development. Yes, steam. So all of them are together, right? कोई भी ऐसा नहीं है that they पांडवों की तरह है, so मतलब आप ऐसा नहीं कि स्टीम कम इंपॉर्टेंट है, ऐसा नहीं कि आयरन कम इंपॉर्टेंट, तो एक दूसरे के बिना अधूरे हैं, they are incomplete without each other. But see, look at the importance of the transport sector. Because of the transport sector, your economy it is getting interconnected, right? What is the utility of the transport sector? The utility of the transport sector is, for example, in a very far off area, there are certain minerals. Iron is there, coal is there, or maybe rubber is there, or some other kind of raw materials are there. Those raw materials now they will very rapidly reach where? They will very rapidly reach the factories. In the factories, what you have? You have the steel-based machines which are powered by steam. So these steam-powered machines in the factory, they will convert those raw material very rapidly into finished products. Then this this multimodal transport system, a combination of water transport, rail transport, road transport, this combination of transport system will be utilized to basically send out those finished products to the domestic market. So there will be faster capture of the domestic markets. Products, they will reach the domestic market at a very faster pace, right? Simultaneously, these very same products, they will reach India also, they will reach China also, they will reach Africa also at a very faster pace now, because पहले तो महीनों लग जाते थे, but now because of your steam powered ships, your oceanic trade, it is being sped up. So therefore there will be faster extraction of raw materials, not just from your own country but also from India, also from Africa, also from China, and there will be faster supply of finished goods to the markets of India, Africa, China. So therefore this is how your transport sector, it is making possible reaping the economic benefits of these machines. Without the transport sector, the machines, they would have developed the capacity to consume raw material, they would have developed the capacity to flush out the finished goods, but without the transport sector, they would not have been able to interconnect the economy. The process would have been still slow. That's why transport sector is very, very important, right? So therefore, this is how your transport sector, it is functioning. Apart from this, what does this A stand for? This A, it actually stands for agriculture sector, right? So there was also a agricultural revolution, and it began before the industrial revolution, right? The point of discussion here is, why are we discussing agriculture? We are discussing agriculture because our motive is to understand that how did the changes which happened in the agriculture sector, they assisted in industrial sector. How did they help the industry? So in the agriculture sector, certain changes are taking place. Let us take a brief look at them. So this is what? This is your agriculture sector, right? This is agriculture sector, and here what are the things which are happening? First of all, the most important thing which is happening is what you call as what enclosure movement. Enclosure movement. In this enclosure movement, what was the situation? Basically, this enclosure movement is nothing of any technology. It is not. It is nothing of any technological nature, right? It is of legal nature. So, in the enclosure movement, obviously, the economy of Britain at this particular point of time, it is agrarian economy, and in the agrarian economy, who will be the rich people of the country? The big agricultural capitalists. Right? So therefore what happens here is that the big agricultural capitalists, that is the big landowners, they are able to lobby the parliament so that the parliament passes such laws which allows these big landowners to take over the lands of small landowners and also to take over the common village lands. For example, in your village, if any one of you has been to a village, or even if you have been in the urban areas, there is certain land which is government land. For example, there is a koi choraha hai, or if there is a road that is, that's a public land. No one can take it. So therefore, such laws, and in the villages there are large tracts of land which are common land, which are common to everyone. There can be common forest areas, or there can be common ponds, or they can be, in general, common piece of land which is not of any particular farmer. So basically, they lobbied with the parliament, and the parliament, like today, for example, you have land acquisition law. The land acquisition law, it would allow taking over of the lands of the small landowners, maybe of the tribals, maybe of the small peasants, by the corporates. That is what your land acquisition law is. So similarly, what I am trying to say is that the parliament, it passed such laws which allowed for easier acquisition of the lands of the small landowners. And as a result, what happened is that your big landowners, they resolved the problem of fragmented land holdings. तो उसको देखते हैं क्या होता है. So what is this enclosure movement? So here your क्यों कर दी कम लाइट? So basically now what is happening is this. क्या क्या लिखा है मैंने देखो. So this is the agriculture sector. In the enclosure movement, the big landlords, they lobbied with the parliament to have such laws that allowed for easier acquisition of lands of small landowners and common lands in the villages. Right? तो इस तरीके से इनके पास ज्यादा लैंड आ गया. इससे क्या हुआ? This led to removal of problem of fragmented land holdings. फ्रेगमेंटेड लैंड होल्डिंग्स का प्रॉब्लम क्या होता है, इसको अगर नॉर्मल उसमें समझाओ, एक बार इसको बंद कर दीजिए. Like in India, we say that there is problem of fragmented land holding. So what is the problem of fragmented land holding? Imagine that this is your country, right? And these are the different land holdings. For example, ये समझिए ये भी आपकी जमीन है, ठीक? But बीच में ये जमीन किसी और की है, बीच में फिर ये जमीन किसी और की है, ये जमीन फिर किसी और की है, फिर दोबारा ये जमीन आपकी है, बट ये जमीन किसी और की है, ये जमीन किसी और की है, ये जमीन किसी और की है, फिर यहाँ पे आपका एक बड़ा सा पैच है, बट बीच में ये जमीन दोबारा किसी और की है. सो बेसिकली आपकी जमीन क्या क्या है? आपकी जमीन ये है. इमेजिन योर ए. सो दिस इज योर लैंड, दिस ए इज योर लैंड, दिस ए इज योर लैंड. You are a big landowner, but around you what you have is your land holding. It is not continuous. Rather, what you have, this is a case of fragmented land holding. Now, if this big landowner A is able to acquire these small land patches of the smaller farmers, then what you will have? You will have a single big land holding of A. And when you have the single big land holding of A, this means it will give you economies of scale. What do you mean by economies of scale? When you have a big land holding, you are able to engage in mass production. When you have big land holding, you will be able to deploy big machines, right? And therefore, when you are able to deploy big machines in the agriculture sector, so therefore now your production will rise. And therefore, now what will happen? Now you would require less land. Maybe with this continuous land holding, you require only this much amount of land for meeting the food security requirement of Britain. And this is now your excess land, and this excess land, it can now be utilized for cash crops. So see, earlier this was the situation, but now what you have this. So therefore, with the deployment of bigger machines, you would require lesser amount of land for meeting the food security requirements of Britain, and you can use the excess land for cash crops, and these cash crops, they are raw materials for the factories. They are the raw material for the factories, and therefore this is how the enclosure movement and the rest of the changes which happened in the agriculture sector, they provided labor. Why? Because all of these small farmers are now landless, right? Plus because of the introductions of machines, that much amount of labor, it is not required in the fields. तो एकदम से बेचारा जो छोटा किसान था वो he becomes landless, right? And now what he has to do? He has only one option: go to the city, and in the city be employed as a worker. So therefore, the changes which happened in the agriculture sector, they resulted in first of all, your small farmer, he became landless. Second, lesser land is needed for food security, and third, now more land is available for the cash crops, right? So therefore, this is how your things are taking place. इसके अंदर अगर ये point number 2 यहाँ पे मैं लिखूँ, थोड़ी सी जगह कम पड़ रही है. Point number 2 क्या है? Obviously, certain developments took place in the domain of productivity. For example, crop rotation. That technique is there of crop rotation, whereby if you have a single piece of land, and if you grow different crops in different seasons, so therefore one particular crop will be requiring one set of nutrients, right? Harvesting has happened, fine. Now what you have, you put second crop. The second crop will utilize different nutrients. Meanwhile, the earlier set of nutrients, they will replenish themselves, right? So that is known as a technique of crop rotation. Similarly, there is another technique, intensive manuring, that is use of fertilizers, etc. So therefore, crop rotation, intensive manuring, plus machines were developed for doing the different agricultural processes. Like for example, earlier you would by hand, you would try to you try to put the seeds into the land with the help of your hands or some tools. Now what you had, seed drills. So therefore mechanical seed drills are there, you are drilling the seeds into the land. Similarly, tractors, similarly, other kind of things for reaping, threshing. Basically, to put it very simply, machines which can be utilized on the field, they were developed, plus certain techniques like crop rotation, intensive manuring, they were developed, and as a result the productivity increased, the requirement for labor also decreased, right? So therefore these innovations, they will also assist in making this small farmer go to the city कि अब यहाँ पे आपका requirement नहीं है, आप शहर जाइए, वहां पे आप फैक्ट्री में काम करिए. Right, machines for farm activity. So therefore ultimately what are we seeing is, we are seeing that this agriculture sector, it is giving precious raw material in the form of cash crops. It is giving precious labor to the factories. So therefore what is the contribution of the agriculture sector to the industrial revolution? Two contributions are there, labor and cash crops. Right, so it gave labor and cash crops to industry. What is this P? बीच में एक P भी था. So this P, it stands for post or post, मतलब postal network. So postal में कुछ नहीं है, basically postal को यहाँ साइड में लिख दे रहा हूं मैं, ठीक है, आप भी लिख लेना. So P, it stands for postal network. And in this postal network, what is there? First of your telegraph, right? So telegraph network, it is developed. And what is the utility or the use? Basically the utility and the use is now basically with the help of your telegraph, faster decision making can take place in the case of businesses. So therefore faster business interaction can take place, faster business transactions they can take place. For example, if I send one of my one of my subordinate to a area कि भाई आप वहां जाओ, वहां जाके जमीन देख के आओ कि वहां पे जमीन कैसी है. Go there, see the land, that should we acquire that land or should we not acquire that land. Maybe that person will take 10 days to go, he will then take 10 days to come back, then after 20 days I'll be able to analyze and take a decision. What if there is a telegraph network? As soon as he reaches there, right, then he can send me a telegraph that all okay, or on these 5 parameters, it's a go. So therefore here I can take my decisions, meanwhile he comes back. Basically what I'm trying to say is that with the help of this telegraph, what is the utility? The utility is faster communication, and this communication is different kind of communication. Faster communication, and which basically led to and faster business transactions. Maybe two businessmen, they can exchange telegraph, they can exchange telegram with each other to carry out business, to transmit information regarding production, regarding requirement of raw material, or regarding requirement of kitna order lena hai, So basically businessmen, they can interact, so ultimately it will result in faster business transactions, and therefore they will also boost the economy. So P stands for postal network. It was developed around this time period. For example, in India also around the time period of 1850s, this telegram network came, right? So therefore this is your PISTA, P-I-S-T-T-A. This is how your things are progressing, right? So you can note this down. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. So these are the different developments which takes place from 1750s to 1850s, right? Look at the utility of the transport sector. Because of the transport sector, not just the goods, but now even the labor, faster movement of labor will also take place. So overall what we can say, that in the transport sector, overall what we are seeing, faster access to raw material, faster access to markets, faster access to labor movement. And obviously it also have naval advantages. This transport sector, it also has military advantages. What are the military advantages? That is with respect to faster deployment of military, faster movement and faster deployment of military, right? Faster movement will be there. Now your naval ships, they will be faster, right? So everything plus movement of troops will be faster, movement of arms ammunition will be faster. So therefore logistics and all of this, so military advantages will also be there. So therefore this is your pista. If you have any doubt in any sentence, right, you can ask me. आप इस पे फोकस कर दीजिए, मतलब यहां से लेकर वहां तक में पूरा एक में अगर आ जाएगा तो परफेक्ट हो जाएगा. कर दीजिए, अगर नहीं दिखेगा तो बच्चे बता देंगे. नहीं तो चलो. Jyoti is asking, last 2 points of agriculture, please explain. Technique and machine for farm activity, not able to understand the line. Last 2 lines, okay. So last 2 points of the agriculture sectors are techniques like crop rotation, intensive manuring. These are basically intensive manuring. It relates to use of different chemicals for manuring the soil. It results in better productivity of the soil. Crop rotation, it is also a technique of farming whereby, let's say if there is a okay, sequential order में कर देते हैं इसको, ठीक है. एक सेकंड, इसको sequential order में कर देते हैं. देखो ये 1 हो गया, ये 2 हो गया, ठीक है, ये 3 हो गया, ठीक है, ये 4 हो गया, ये 5 है, ठीक है, ये आपका 6 है, ये आपका 7 है, ये आपका 8, ठीक. उसके बाद क्या कहते हैं, ये आपका यहाँ पे पॉइंट नंबर 9, राइट, एंड ये आपका 9 का 1, ये आपका 9 का 2, ये आपका 9 का 3, ठीक है. सो इस तरीके से इसको आप A लिख लीजिए, इसको आप B लिख लीजिए, इसको आप C लिख लीजिए, ठीक है. तो इस तरीके से, ठीक है. I'll use numbers that I understand कि कभी कभी हो जाता है confusion. So basically crop rotation is again a technique whereby, let's say there is a crop, right, crop A. That crop A might require certain kind of nutrients which are there in the land, not all the nutrients. So first of all, you know what you can do is you plant crop A. Once that crop A is harvested, after that your land, it is deficient in crop A like nutrients. So therefore now you plant crop B. That will utilize certain different kind of nutrients which are already richly present in the land, right. Meanwhile, by the time crop B is harvested, your first kind of nutrients, they will replenish. So therefore this allows for continuous production. So what we are trying to say is that the productivity, because of these techniques, the productivity increase, which will assist in food security. And third point is machines for the farm activity. So earlier manual labor was there, but now different kind of machines for reaping, for threshing, for drilling the seeds into the ground. These are the different processes of the farm activity. So therefore these machines, when they are developed, what is the net result? There is now lesser requirement of labor in the farms. Plus many of the small land owners, they have also lost their land because of the enclosure movement, right. So because of the enclosure movement, and this is how the agriculture sector, it gave labor and also it gave cash crops, because now because of the machines, because of better productivity, because of economies of scale, lesser land is required for meeting the food security requirements of Britain, and more land can be deviated towards production of cash crops, right. And those cash crops like cotton, raw cotton is a cash crop, raw jute is a cash crop. Those cash crops, they can be produced in the agrarian economy, and those act as raw material for the machines which are there in the urban areas, and raw cotton etc. it can be made available locally as well. Okay, then ठीक है, आप इसको दिखाइए, मैं आप इसको दिखा दीजिए, ठीक है, और मैं सवालों के जवाब दे देता हूँ. जैसे मैं इधर हो जाता हूँ. Anukul is asking which sector was the most important. Actually all the sectors are important, but मतलब वही मैं कह रहा था that one cannot separate different, for example, but you see, I mean steam, development of steam, it is an innovation. Similarly the iron sector, it is also an innovation, but I think the most important sector, it is the transport sector. Why? Because it is the transport sector which is resulting in faster exploitation of the colonies like India, Africa, China. It is your transport sector which is really allowing the benefits of all the other innovations to take shape. So I think the most important is the transport sector. However, without steam there cannot be any transport sector, without iron also there cannot be any railways, etc. So you cannot separate them, but yes, transport sector was very, very important. Okay. In iron industry, what is before, I'll read all of this. In iron industry, okay, एक last question भी है, वो भी देखते हैं. Iron blast furnace was developed. This allowed for cheaper and better quality pig iron and cast iron. PIG, pig iron and cast iron. These are types of steel. Therefore allowed for better quality machines plus decreased cost of machines. Decreased cost of machines, because if it is cheaper steel, then machines they will also be cheaper. Allowed for better quality machine plus decreased cost of machines, right? Point number 9, 9(1) अगर मैं read out करता हूं तो enclosure movement, big landlords lobbied with parliament to have such laws that allowed for easier acquisition of lands of small landowners and common lands in the villages. This led to removal of problem of fragmented land holdings that led to economies of scale. Therefore now small farmer is landless, more land is available for cash crops, lesser land is needed for meeting the food security requirement, right? So this is point number 9(1). Point 9(2) is techniques like crop rotation, intensive manuring. 9(3) is machines for farm activity. Okay, zoom करने के लिए कह रहे हैं थोड़ा सा. यार आप एक काम करिए, आप अपने जाएगा. ओके, जूम कर रहे जूम कर रहे. प्लीज रिपीट द रोडवेज. रोडवेज वाला पार्ट ये है. सो ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर में अगर देखें, सो रोडवेज में इनोवेशन ऑफ पक्का रोड्स बाय मैकडम. मैकडम वाज अ पर्सन हु डेवलप्ड पक्का रोड. पक्का रोड पता है ना क्या होता है, राइट? उसको मैकेडमाइज्ड रोड भी कहते हैं. अब वो अंग्रेज तो नहीं बोलेंगे पक्का रोड, वो बोलेंगे मैकेडमाइज्ड रोड. एंड ऑब्वियसली व्हाट विल हैपन, इट विल रिजल्ट इन फास्टर कनेक्टिविटी एंड as a result there will be now development of railroad network, right? So this is there. इसमें तो ये तो सिंपल है, इसमें कोई डाउट नहीं होना चाहिए. रेलवेज 1814 फर्स्ट कार्गो ट्रेन, जॉर्ज स्टीफेंसन adapted steam engine for railways. 1830 फर्स्ट पैसेंजर ट्रेन, इट ऑल्सो केम इन, राइट? इसकी समझ में अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम है तो आप वो बैच कोऑर्डिनेट को लिखिए. मुझे लग रहा है कि आपने पूछा है कि स्पेलिंग में कोई आपको प्रॉब्लम. वाटर ट्रांसपोर्ट, स्टीम पावर्ड शिप्स, ये तो खैर दिख रहा होगा, इसमें कुछ नहीं है. दिस इज बूस्ट. It would give a boost to the domestic trade. Okay, Shubham is asking, sir, how Parliament can acquire property of small farmers if in England there exists right to property? Parliament is not acquiring the property. Parliament is bringing such laws. Look what I have written. I have written big landlords lobbied with Parliament to have such laws. Parliament will only pass a law which will allowed for easier acquisition of lands of small landowners. By whom? By the big landowners. So therefore, like you have land acquisition law in India, which can be either pro small landowner, that is where it will be tough for the big landowners or for the big companies to acquire that land. So it depends what kind of land acquisition bill or what kind of land acquisition law you have, right? Obviously the rich people, they benefit more in democracy, right? And right to vote, it was any which ways not available to the poorer sections of the society. So आपके डेमोक्रेसी में तो यही होता है. राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी कोई ऐसे एब्सोल्यूट नहीं होता है, ठीक है? तो मतलब राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी किसका, जो अमीर लोग हैं उनको बेनिफिट रहेगा, ठीक है ना? राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी इज देयर, बट राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी इट इज नॉट एब्सोल्यूट. राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी इट इज अ राइट सब्जेक्ट टू deprivation by law. So if the law provides that in such and such manner you can be deprived of the property, for example in public interest, you would have to accept whatever compensation the big landowner is giving you, and you have to allow him to acquire your land, then that is the law. And मतलब reality तो ये है, yes, right to property is there, but obviously if your parliament is making such a law which is benefiting the richer sections of the society, then yes, you can criticize that the right to property of the small landowners, it was it was not this thing respected, right? So आप ये लिखिए, ठीक है? तो लेट्स गो ऑन अ स्मॉल ब्रेक, ठीक है? लेट्स गो ऑन अ स्मॉल ब्रेक ऑफ 5 टू शो पोस्टल पॉइंट. पोस्टल पॉइंट दिखा देंगे, अभी आपको सारे दिखा देंगे. लेट्स गो ऑन अ ब्रेक ऑफ 10 मिनट्स. You are having a lot of questions which I am unable to read because बहुत ज्यादा तेज से आ रहे हैं. So if you have any questions, you send across to the batch coordinators. जितने भी बैच कोऑर्डिनेटर्स क्वेश्चन भेजेंगे मैं उन सबको आंसर करूंगा, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. अच्छे से जूम करके आपको पूरा दिखाया जाएगा ताकि आपको कहीं पे भी कुछ अगर प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है तो आप इसको देख लीजिए. बट ये इंपॉर्टेंट है क्योंकि आपका एक ही पेज के अंदर काफी कुछ हो जा रहा है, ठीक है? आप पोस्टल वाला पॉइंट अभी दिखा दे रहे हैं. सर पिस्ता रेफर्स टू दी कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन. यस, these are the different sectors where innovation took place. Overall, faster access to raw material. The factories, they are able to get faster access to raw material. There is faster access to the markets. The finished products, they can reach the markets at a faster pace. And finally, faster labor movement is there. People, they can move from one place to another at a faster pace. ये दिखा दिया बहुत देर, उसको दिखा दो, वो छोटा सा ही था, देख लिया होगा. अब आप वहां पे जो भी आपने नहीं दिखाया है उसको ज्यादा डिटेल में दिखा दो. सो विल मीट इन 9 more minutes. तो मीनवाइल कैमरामैन विल शो यू ईच एंड एवरी पॉइंट, ठीक है? तो जो भी जहां पे नहीं दिख रहा आप उसको देख लीजिए. क्वेश्चन जो है बैच कोऑर्डिनेटर के पास आप भेजिए, उनको टैकल करा जाएगा. आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट द बैच कोऑर्डिनेटर्स कि अगर इसमें कोई भी कॉन्सेप्चुअल डाउट है तो या तो आप खुद क्लैरिफाई कर दें या फिर मुझे भी आप भेजें. अभी आप पोस्टल पॉइंट में कुछ नहीं है, बहुत देर दिखा दिया आपको पोस्टल पॉइंट. अभी आप ये जो ज्यादा लिखा हुआ है उसमें फोकस करिए. हाँ तो यशपाल कोई नहीं, आप लिखिए, 3 पेज में लिखिए, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, समझ में आना चाहिए. जैसे जैसे प्रैक्टिस होगी आप खुद एक पेज में कन्वर्ट कर लेंगे इसको फ्यूचर में. एक्चुअली इसको एक पेज में लिखने का तरीका ये है कि आपको लैंडस्केप मोड में बनाना पड़ेगा. ये A4 में पोर्ट्रेट मोड पे नहीं हो पाएगा एक पेज में. लैंडस्केप मोड में रखते तो हो जाता, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, कंटेंट आपके पास होना चाहिए. बट हाँ देखो, सबसे अमेजिंग बात क्या है कि अगर आपको बस अब ये इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन में, इफ यू सिंपली रिमेंबर पिस्ता, देन यू विल नॉट बी मिसिंग एनी पॉइंट. you will be mentioning each and every sector because you remember a mnemonic pista, right? So postal, iron and steel sector, फिर your S से आपका steam आ गया, T से transport आ गया, ठीक है, फिर T से आपका textile आ गया, A से आपका agriculture आ गया. बाकी मजा तो तब आएगा जब आप थोड़े से टफ कठिन सवाल पूछें जिससे क्लास में कुछ बढ़िया से डिस्कशन हो. इफ देयर आर एनी क्वेश्चंस व्हिच आर रिक्वायरिंग एनालिसिस व्हिच आर हैविंग इन योर माइंड, यू नो दैट यू कैन ब्रिंग अबाउट. 5 more minutes left for the class. Can't wait to be back. भाई इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्केल का क्या मतलब होता है? इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्केल का मतलब ये होता है, फॉर एग्जांपल इट इज, कैसे बताऊं, इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्केल का मतलब होता है व्हेन यू बेसिकली डू मास प्रोडक्शन ना, देन यू आर एबल टू प्रोड्यूस योर प्रोडक्ट्स एट अ चीपर लेवल. फॉर एग्जांपल if you are manufacturing, let's say 1 lakh Pepsi bottles, you know, every day, then your cost per bottle will come down. So when you have a huge amount of land with you and then you are doing your agrarian production, your cost of production it will come down and your productivity levels will also increase, right? तो ये concept होता है economies of scale का. That is when you do production at a large scale, your cost of production comes down. ठीक है? एग्रीकल्चर दिखा दो. हाँ, लेफ्ट वाला दिखाया हुआ है एग्रीकल्चर. थोड़ा जूम इन कर दो लेफ्ट वाले पे, और लेफ्ट और ऊपर ये वाला पार्ट कवर कर दो. जो ब्लू में लिखा हुआ है ना सारा पार्ट, वो कवर कर दो. So American Revolution, it is beginning in 1765. right? So what are the factors beside IR when American Revolution took place? American Revolution took place 1765 onwards, because these colonies were acquired by England when there was no industrial revolution. Yes, there was no industrial revolution at that particular point of time. So question क्या आपका? What factors? Be a little more clear. What is name of machine of Hargreaves in textile? पता नहीं यार क्या नाम था, देख लो, गूगल पे सर्च कर लो. Not important. It was basically a spinning machine. Simple. उतना ही जरूरी है, उससे ज्यादा नहीं. Okay, so 10 minutes are over. Now let us move on, and we will now discuss the impact of the Industrial Revolution. अब आता है धमाकेदार काम. ठीक है, क्या धमाकेदार काम? इंटेलिजेंट काम. इंटेलिजेंट काम क्या है? इंटेलिजेंट काम है व्हाट वाज द इंपैक्ट ऑफ द इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन. सो व्हेन वी लुक एट द इंपैक्ट ऑफ द इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन, सर्टेन interesting thing come. How to look at the impact? See, and this will answer our question that industrial revolution was indeed a revolution because the amount of change was huge. और देखिए किस तरीके से हो रहा है. Impact of industrial revolution. Now this impact of industrial revolution, it can be analyzed into multiple groups. ठीक है, first of all, if you look at the impact of industrial revolution on Britain as a country. So what was the impact on Britain? एक तो हम ये फोकस कर सकते हैं. तो इसका अगर देखा जाए इम्पैक्ट, तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल दिस इज द चेंज. जैसे आप जीडीपी प्लॉट करते हो ना, सो जीडीपी प्लॉट करते हो, उसमें क्या होता है आपका, यू ड्रॉ दीज पाई चार्ट्स. So earlier, largely the economy was agrarian, but now after industrialization, the economy largely became industrial economy, right? So therefore, your GDP, first of all, what is happening is that your composition of the economy changed from dominated by agriculture to now dominated by industrial. So that is the first point. Okay, that is Britain moved towards an industrial economy from earlier an agrarian economy. Okay, from agrarian economy it is moving towards industrial economy. Second component we can mention that the GDP increased like anything. The GDP of Britain, it increased like anything to an extent that the Britain over these 100 years it became the top economic power. Right, and the top economic power will usually be the top military power as well, right, because you need good economics for good military. So therefore Britain became a top economic power and it started dominating the world trade, plus it also developed as a top geopolitical power. Obviously, when your domination of the world trade is happening, what is happening? Now British exports are increasing. And export किस चीज के? Exports of finished goods. And what will increase? The raw material import will increase. Why? Because now the machines, they are hungry. They want to eat the raw material so as to churn out your finished goods. So therefore now what will happen? The imports will also increase, but earlier the imports were of the finished goods, now the imports are of the raw material. So therefore what is increasing? Import of raw material increased. That means what we are saying is that the structure of the trade of the British, it changed. What is the structure of the trade? The structure of the trade earlier was that, as one of the student mentioned, earlier the Britishers, they used to import finished goods. Now they are importing raw material and they are exporting the finished goods, right? So therefore what is happening is that the structure of the British trade, it is changing. The structure of the trade changed. And how it is changing? From importer of finished goods, right? So finished goods na isko FG, finished goods. So from importer of finished goods, they are becoming exporters of finished goods. Right? So therefore the structure of trade is changing, and now what they are importing? They are importing the raw material. Right? So now, for example, if we take the case of India, so earlier the Britishers, they were importing the finished cotton cloth from India, but now they are importing raw cotton from India. They are converting that raw cotton through their machine based factories into finished cotton, and then they are supplying that finished cotton to Britain and then to India back. Right? So therefore this is how your structure of trade, it is changing. They are exporting finished goods and they are importing the raw material, right? So therefore this is the impact which is there on Britain. Overall what we can mention is that Britain also became the top geopolitical power, because economics is very, very important, right? So therefore this helped. The industrial revolution, it helped. IR helped Britain become the top geopolitical power. अच्छा, इसमें एक और पॉइंट मेरे को याद आ रहा है, वो हम क्या लिख सकते हैं? Because of the industrialization, will the colonial benefits or will the benefits from the colonies for the British increase? Yes, they will. Now they will be able to exploit their colonies better. Because now they have this rapid transport system which is powered by the steam engines, and therefore now very rapidly they will be able to extract raw materials from the colonies, and they will be also very rapidly able to capture the markets of the colonies. So therefore what happens? Colonialism increased, and Britishers, they will be able to exploit their colonies in a much more efficient manner. Right? So colonial exploitation increased as now the British could exploit colonies at a rapid pace by capturing the export market, that is market of the colony, plus by depriving the colonies of their mineral and other raw materials wealth. Right? So therefore this is the impact on Britain. The British economy, it is benefiting a lot. Its GDP increasing, its structure of trade is changing, its composition, it is changing. Right? So therefore it is moving towards mechanized production. So therefore this is the impact which is there on Britain. Now what about the people of Britain? That is impact on people. So first point, obviously who will be benefiting? The capitalist class, the middle class, it benefited. Why? Because they are reaping the benefits of this industrialization. Right? So capitalist class benefited, but within the capitalist class, who benefited? Within the capitalist class, within the rich section of the society, we are seeing that earlier there was domination of the big landowners. Now there will be domination of the industrial capitalists, that is the people who own factories. So from domination of big landowners to domination of factory owners, right? So who will become real powerful, mighty powerful? Earlier it was the big landowners. They are influencing the policies of the British Parliament. But now who becomes powerful? These factory owners, they become powerful, that is industrial capitalists. What kind of capitalists they are? Capitalist is a person who is interested in profit motive. What kind of capitalists they are? They are the industrial capitalists, that is they are earning profits by manufacturing products, right? So therefore this is how your things are happening. Now what about the impact on the workers? The impact on the non-rich class, it was very bad. So for example, the first thing that happened is that because of the enclosure movement, the small landowners in the rural areas, they are losing their lands, right? Plus because of increasing productivity in the agriculture sector and use of machines, deployment of machines in the agriculture sector, the requirement for labor in the agriculture sector, it is going down. And as a result, huge amount of migration takes place from the rural areas to the urban areas. So therefore, the first social impact is the huge amount of migration from the rural areas to the urban areas. So therefore, mass level migration from rural areas to the cities, that is to the urban areas. Why? Because of A, the enclosure movement, it led to loss of land, and second, machines, they decreased requirement of the labor in the farms. So therefore, ये लोग क्या करेंगे? ये लोग बेचारे now they are landless and now they will go to the urban areas. Why? They want to work. They want to become workers in the factories. So therefore, they now go to the urban areas. The cities, they get flooded by these migrants, and the city infrastructure, it is not capable of dealing with this huge amount of pressure. And as a result, what happens? The infrastructure, it crumbles. The city infrastructure, the housing infrastructure, it is unable to catch up with this huge influx of population from the rural areas. So therefore, your urban infrastructure becomes strained. Urban infrastructure did not catch up with the huge influx of the rural people, and as a result, in the urban areas, in the cities, what did you have? In the cities, you had this big contrast of the rich capitalists, the rich factory owners living in gated colonies, right? Their life is very smooth, they are enjoying, whereas there is this big contrast that on the other side of the river, that is Thames River, there are these slums where there is ghetto living, where there is no sanitation, where there is no hygiene, where there is tuberculosis, where there is cholera, right? All of these factors are there. So therefore, there developed a huge contrast. Right? So this was their life. Overcrowding, lack of sanitation, diseases. So therefore huge contrast it developed between whom? Between the working class and between the capitalist class. Right? And this contrast over a period of time, it resulted in something which we'll know as rise of socialism. Okay? So we'll come to that. A student had also asked a question regarding that, so we'll briefly talk about it. Second aspect is, so therefore one thing which the workers they are suffering from is the poor living conditions. Second aspect is poor work conditions. So therefore poor living conditions are there, plus poor working conditions. And in this poor working condition, what comes? In this poor working condition, first of all, very low wages. Because at this particular point of time, what is in vogue is around the time period of 1776, your Adam Smith, he is a famous economist, and he wrote a book, An Inquiry into the Nature and the Causes of Wealth of Nations. Adam Smith in 1776, he wrote this book, An Inquiry into Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations, whereby he promoted gated colonies. ठीक है? Gated colonies मतलब जैसे आज के टाइम पे आप कॉलोनी में रहते हो ना, चार दीवारी रहती है, gated रहता है, gated colonies. So in 1776, Adam Smith he wrote An Inquiry into the Causes and Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations, and there he propounded the idea of laissez-faire. And what is laissez-faire? Laissez-faire, it means free market economy. A free market economy is an economy whereby your state or your government or your parliament does not interfere, does not intervene in the market at all. And the forces of demand and supply will solely decide each and every decision of the economy. Each and every decision of the economy, like the wages of the workers, social security to the workers in the form of accident allowance or accident insurance, sickness allowance, or your pensions, etc., etc. Right? So therefore all of these factors, they should be decided by the market forces of demand and supply. Meaning, if the supply of workers, it is relatively less, whereas the demand for the workers is high, then automatically this market force of demand and supply will function, and it will result in better wages for the workers. Imagine a factory owner, he wants 1,000 workers, but availability of workers is not high, and therefore the factory owner, to attract the workers, he will try to pay better wages. He might provide pension, he might provide sickness allowance, he might provide accident insurance, etc., 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 so as to attract the workers. So this is how your market forces are coming into operation, and this is having an impact on the wages of the workers. आज के टाइम पे इंडिया में वही है. For example, if you pass out from any engineering college and you go to the market, then as per the demand and supply of the talent in the economy, you will get, a salary package of maybe 30,000 per month or maybe 5 lakh rupees per month. Depend what is your caliber and your talents are in how much demand. Right? So therefore, this will be the deciding factor. The market forces, for example, like today market forces, they determine the salaries. So therefore, that is free market economy. So what was in operation at that particular point of time was these poor working conditions. They got also impacted by. So what was there? We will discuss. Poor working conditions are there in the form of low working wages or poor wages. Excess hours of work, from 16 to 20 hours a day, the workers were made to work. (16 to 20 hours of work day). There was no social security. And what do you mean by social security? Social security means social protections. Social security, they come in the form of, let's say, accident insurance. They come in the form of sickness allowance. That is, if I get sick, do I get some wages? They are in the form of, let's say, pensions. या तो wages ही नहीं मिल रहे, pensions कहाँ से मिलेंगे? So therefore there was no social security at that particular point of time. Right? So this is how your things are operating. So therefore very poor conditions of work is there. Apart from this, what is happening? Plus there was rampant child labor, and there was rampant and the women, their share in the employment also increased. Why? Because women were ready to work at lower wages. Right? So therefore there was rampant child labor. Why there was there? Because it is laissez-faire. The government has no role to interfere in the market. The government cannot say that this is the minimum age of work. Why? Because simple point is laissez-faire, free market economy, right? So therefore the government will not intervene in favor of the children also. Let the market be free. Right? Rampant child labor, and obviously child labor, it came cheap, right? So children, they will be ready to work at lower wages. So गरीबी इतनी थी कि ये लोग अपने बच्चों को भेज देते, right? So therefore poor working conditions are there. So this is how your negative impacts on the workers is increasing. And what is the reason? Reason is the ideology of laissez-faire. And what is this ideology of laissez-faire? It is basically given by your Adam Smith. So Adam Smith his book An Inquiry into Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations, he propounded the idea of free market economy where state shall have no role in the market and market forces of demand and supply will determine all decisions in the market, right? So therefore this is the idea of laissez-faire. That means the government will not come to the protection of the workers. The parliament cannot pass any law in favor of the protection of the workers. The parliament cannot say that no, you cannot make the workers work for 16 hours a day. The parliament cannot say that this is the minimum wages act like you have in India, minimum wages act. The parliament cannot say that the companies who are employing more than 20 people, they have to contribute to the provident fund, that is the pension of the workers. ये सब चीजें इंडिया में है, ये सब चीजें नहीं हो सकती. Why? Because it is free market economy. So therefore the ideology of laissez-faire was responsible. The idea of free market capitalism or free market economy, it was responsible. It aggravated the conditions of the workers. Right? So this led to no protective measures by the government for the working class, and as a result what is happening? As a result now you finally, or all of these things, they are contributing to rise of socialism. So Karl Marx, he studied the society, industrialized society of England, and he came up with his ideas of Marxism. In 1848 he came up with his Communist Manifesto, and in 1867 he came up with his Das Kapital, whereby he criticized the capitalism. So we have a separate class on socialism, Marxism, etc. But basically socialism and Marxism, they talk about what? They talk about welfare of the workers. They talk about overthrow of capitalism by the working class. They talk about end of exploitation of the workers. So therefore it had multiple impacts. इन सब के impacts क्या हुए? इन सारी चीजों के impact क्या हुए? Overall अगर देखा जाए. So therefore all of this, ठीक है, this contrast, all of this, it led to negatives of industrial capitalism, right, and laissez-faire. They led to what? They led to rise of socialism and Marxism. That is, they led to rise in this solidarity of the working class, right? So this is like one. Second, simply we can say rise in solidarity. Rise in solidarity of the working class, and now they will start demanding certain things. Example, now the workers, they now demanded right to form trade unions and agitated against their working conditions, and therefore finally around the time period of your 1900s, around the time period of your 1800s, you know, this feeling developed that the workers, they might revolt, right? The government, it started feeling that because of the laissez-faire, capitalism itself, it has come under threat, because the workers, they might revolt, and therefore finally gradually in the 1800s this idea of laissez-faire, it started moving a little back, right? And state started to intervene for the first time in favor of the working class. Why? Because they were threatened by the workers that if these workers, they come down to a revolt, then capitalism itself will be threatened. There will be socialism, there can be Marxism, capitalism itself will be threatened. So although Marxism comes into picture in around the time period of 1850s, the government threatened by the workers, it starts intervening. So see what I have written. So what is the impact? All of these atrocities against the workers, what do they represent? We can say that the negatives of industrial capitalism. What is industrial capitalism? This capitalism which is operating after industrial revolution. The capitalism which is located in the factories. The capitalism which is whereby the machines are responsible for churning out profits. The capitalism where factory based production is there. That is your industrial capitalism, right? So the negatives of industrial capitalism and this laissez-faire, that is the government will not intervene. This leads to what? This leads to rise of socialism and Marxism in 19th century. अभी के लिए इतना समझ लीजिए, socialism and Marxism, they talk about welfares of the workers, even to the extent whereby Karl Marx says that there should be violent overthrow of the capitalist by the workers. The workers, they should go, they should kill the capitalists by force, they should capture their factories, they should capture their wealth, and they should overthrow the parliament, they should overthrow the state. Right? That is what the ideas of Karl Marx is. So therefore, itna sara agitation aaya. Anyways, so the negatives of laissez-faire, they are bringing capitalism itself under threat. So therefore, this is what is happening. And now there is what? Obviously there is rise in solidarity of the working class, because now the working class एक level के बाद उनको जब परेशान किया गया, एक level के बाद जब उनको exploit किया गया, ultimately what happens? The working class, it came together that we have to collectively demand our rights. and now they start demanding their rights. So workers now demanded right to form trade unions. They also agitated against their poor working conditions, right? Therefore, what is the result? The laissez-faire brought capitalism itself under the threat. This led to concessions by the state to workers in farmers. So finally, see, the state is coming in favor of the capitalists. Okay, why? It is coming in the favor of the workers, but ultimately goal क्या है? Goal है to save capitalism. So क्या क्या concessions दे रहे हैं? Factory acts they are brought in. For example, 1802 में एक आया था, एक और 1800 something में आया था. Ultimately क्या कर रहे हैं उससे? Factory acts in 1800s for better conditions of work. What are better conditions of work? Basically, for example, 16 to 20 hours of work day. So basically hours of work. Child labor is there. So therefore, they will say that at least the person, you know, should be of this much years of age, 10 years of age, 12 years of age होना चाहिए. Poor wages are there. So therefore, not minimum wages, but some kind of an thrust to better conditions overall, right? So therefore, in general, SI. So therefore, factory acts are coming which are trying to improve their conditions of work. Second, right to form trade union, it is given in 1824. Trade union क्या है? Trade union, it is an organization of the workers which will allow the workers to have collective voice. So the workers, they can come together and they can bargain. They can bargain collectively. कि हम लोगों का हमारा ये अधिकार है. This can be the maximum hours of work. Will not, whatever, you know, they can fight. So therefore, earlier trade unions, they were illegal. Now they were legalized. So around the time period of 1824, right to form trade unions, it is coming. Plus workers, they led a Chartist movement, right? So एक Chartist movement थी 1830s में, 40s में. This Chartist movement was for right to vote. The workers realized that till the point of time we do not have a right to vote, we will not be able to influence the parliamentarians. Because the parliamentarians, they are representatives of the people who are voting. Until unless the workers, they have the right to vote, why will the parliamentarians work honestly in the interest of the workers? So therefore, they demanded the right to vote in 1830s and 1840s, and this is known as Chartist movement. Although they were not able to win, so that's why I have written, workers via Chartist movement demanded right to vote. R to vote is right to vote, 1830s, 40s, although they failed. But ultimately in the long term, by the time period of 1929, everyone got right to vote. So therefore what India did right away after 1947, the Britishers, they are taking such a long time to have universal aided franchise, that is by 1929. So therefore you see, this is the, on the negative side also, there is a huge impact of the industrial revolution. It is resulting in rise in the solidarity of the working class. It is resulting in, you know, agitations by the working class. On the positive side, it is resulting in rise of socialism, rise of Marxism. It is resulting in right to vote for everyone. So you see, it has a huge political impact. It has huge social impact as well, right? So therefore, this is how the impact on the people of Britain is there. Right? So the society is getting divided into two parts. The capitalist society or the capitalist class, it is benefiting, whereas your working class, it is on the losing side. And therefore the negatives of industrial capitalism, they are responsible for rise of socialism. Right? तो आप इसको लिखिए, आप यहाँ से दिखाइए इसको, ठीक है, शुरुआत से, और meanwhile मैं questions का आंसर करता हूँ, ठीक है. First of all, Manu is asking, but sir, Marx says industrial revolution increased domestication of women. Women worked at home for free to compensate low wages of workers and reduce their expenditure for services. Women worked at home for free to compensate low wages of workers and reduce their expenditure for services. See, मतलब वो थोड़ा सा एक high level ideology हो जाता है, ठीक है. The first point is that in the industrialization, अगर आप ideally देखोगे, if you talk about Lenin, right? So when you talk about Lenin, what is the situation? Lenin, for example, he established public kitchens, he established public creches, so that there is equality between man and woman, so that the women, they can also participate in the labor force. So Lenin is the first implementer of Marxism. So Karl Marx completely favored industrialization. Yes, he was in favor of removing any kind of this gender gap, right? So मतलब अगर हम ideology of Karl Marx की बात करें तो Karl Marx is in favor of women as labor. But what I think, what you are referring to is that Karl Marx observed that how industrialization operated, and Karl Marx is saying that women, they worked at home for free so as to compensate for lower wages of their husbands, right? ठीक है, I agree. But apart from this, was this not a huge phenomenon that the employment of the women in the factories also increased rapidly? That was also a feature. Maybe what Karl Marx it is referring to is, he is referring to in such scenarios where women are unable to find jobs in the factories, where the nature of work is such that women are not employed. There can be different kinds of factories, there can be different kind of work. So there they will be working at home for free to compensate for the lower wages of the workers. But wherever they are getting an opportunity, why won't they go to the factories and they would try to earn something extra for their families? Ultimately, poverty, it is at the base of your question, Manu, right? So therefore, this thing. Weber was saying, so can we say that industrial revolution has benefited only the capitalist class and rise of socialism and Marxism are also due to ill effects of industrial revolution? Yes, we can say that. The benefits of the industrialization, they did not accrue to the working class, and as a result their reaction is Marxism, their reaction is socialism, right? अब आप ये दिखा दिया on people of Britain बीच, अच्छा So can the students, they help me analyze the impact on India, impact of industrial revolution in India, on India? From whatever we have discussed so far, can you help me write down the impact of industrial revolution on India? पहले आप ये लिख लीजिए, लेफ्ट कह रहे हैं, एक बार आप बीच वाला दिखा दीजिए. Yes, by 1929 they got right to vote, and in fact by late 1800s they were, because of the agitation of the working class, by late 1800s there were big political parties who had workers as their support base. For example, Germany, it had the biggest party in Germany was a party of the working class, right? So yes, by the time of late 1800s they did get politically activated. Pressure to supply raw material, demand of raw material, exploitation, movement of labor, yes, drain of wealth, very good, Ravi, right? So now let us populate. British goods flooded the markets, very well. Exports from India declined, yes. Deindustrialization happened, yes. On Britain, exploit economy and working class of India, yes. Impediment in the growth of Indian economy, ठीक है. Now let us come to this particular point, and you can write it down actually, ठीक है. So देखो बड़ा interesting है. Interesting क्या है? What is the impact on India? First of all, the impact on India is that India's forex will decrease. Can we say that India's forex decreased? Because earlier India would be, मतलब in general, वैसे तो Britishers थे ही, but in general what is happening? Earlier India was a seller. Now India is becoming a buyer, है ना? So therefore, as a result, what will happen? That the structure of trade is changing, and India is becoming exporter of the raw material from exporter of finished cotton cloth. ठीक है, ऐसा हम बोल सकते हैं. सेकेंड एस्पेक्ट क्या है? व्हाट विल बी इट्स इंपैक्ट ऑन द आर्टिजन्स ऑफ इंडिया, ऑन द हैंडीक्राफ्ट सेक्टर ऑफ इंडिया. द वीवर्स, लाइक देयर वर लैक्स ऑफ वीवर्स इन बंगाल, they will suddenly over a period of time they will go out of job. Now in India, the machine produced cotton cloth, it is being purchased by the Indians. Why? Because it is cheaper, right? And over a period of time, the Britishers, they are also able to manufacture better quality cotton cloth. So therefore, what will happen to the weavers of India? The handicraft sector, they will get destroyed, right? Similarly, not just in the textile sector, but in other sectors also, like glass sector, right, and other sectors. Your British mechanized machine produced goods, they started dominating, राइट. सो देयरफॉर इस तरीके से इस वजह से क्या हुआ, जितना भी हमारा आर्टिजन सेक्टर था, जितना भी हमारा हैंडीक्राफ्ट सेक्टर था, वो सारे लोग अनएम्प्लॉयड हो गए. When they became unemployed, exploitation of the raw material to local industry, yes, ठीक है, सही कह रहे हो. So handloom sector will be destroyed. As a result, what will happen? If earlier I was a weaver, now suddenly I don't, no one is buying my product. अब मेरे को तो अपना घर चलाना है. So what I will do? I will look at the economy. In the economy, do I see industrialization? No. Very weirdly, industrialization ideas, industrialization technology, it was there with the Britishers, but they did not industrialize India. They introduced railways in India in 1853 for